What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to this week's installment on The Lake Show, and I really appreciate you all making me a part of your day again. So last week, I made my second NFL mock draft. I went first through 32nd, all the picks, and I did not leave anything up to chance in regards to people trading up or trading down in the draft. I'm going to be going over a couple things today about the NFL draft regarding teams that possibly could trade up for certain players and positions that they may need. But today we're going to go over just a couple little stories. I know I made my mock draft last week. It was a good video and a lot of people viewed it, and I really appreciate again for all the love and support. It's been nothing but fun to do this sort of stuff. It's just awesome. I have such a fun time doing all this stuff. Really makes me feel like an analyst, like Stephen A. Smith, even though he's in it right now with LeBron James. Anybody who has been watching recently the beef going on between Stephen A. Smith and LeBron James, it's actually kind of comical just because, man, there's a lot of things to get upset about in this world, and I don't even think being critical of NBA players and performances, I don't think that necessarily is the biggest thing you should be worried about. But Stephen A. Smith and LeBron James, their beef that's going on right now is actually kind of hysterical to me. But that's neither here nor there. And as you all know, I'm a Bucked Up ambassador, so use promo code SHOW32, get yourself 20% off any and all pre-workout orders at buckedup.com. So what are we going to go over today? Well, I'm going to go over one team in particular, and then I'll talk about the NFL draft a little bit, and then I'm going to dive in a little bit to college football and NBA in this episode. So realistically, we're going to start with probably, this is going to be, in my opinion, the most hit or miss team in the NFL, and we're going to talk about the New York Jets. So that's going to be coming up in here just in a few seconds. But again, if you aren't subscribed to the channel already, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. You're really helping out it. And, we're growing slowly but surely. It's turning into something, worth note. We're at 210 subscribers on YouTube now. I really appreciate all the love and support. It's such a fun time doing this. And again, I thank nobody else other than my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. He's the one who allows me to live a good life, even though some days I may forget that and some days I struggle, but he's never let me down, and continuously he never will let me down. So with that being said, let's jump in straight to the New York Jets. And now we all know this isn't necessarily who they're going to take in the draft. This is mainly the expectations that I personally expect from the New York Jets. I think they can possibly compete for a wild card spot, but it all depends on the quarterback position. And we all know that the Jets signed Justin Fields to a 3-year deal worth $40 million, I believe. I think that was the right number. But either way, Justin Fields, is more than likely going to be QB1 for the New York Jets. He's more than likely going to get that starting role. I fully expect him to compete and play in the preseason this upcoming August. I completely expect Justin Fields to be QB1, and I don't expect the New York Jets to draft a quarterback in the first round. I am not saying that it's not possible, whether they trade up or not, but when you look at Justin Fields as a whole, is he really going to succeed in New York? My gut tells me no, he's not. My gut tells me that this is Justin Fields' last stop as an NFL starting quarterback, and he has a lot to prove. Now, do I think it's possible that he can work out? Yes. With Justin Fields' athleticism, he has the arm strength. Accuracy is spotty, but he is very mobile and probably one of the most athletic quarterbacks in the NFL. But when you look at it as a whole, this team as a whole, they are doing a lot of things, I feel like, the wrong way. A lot of teams in the NFL try to build a team, and this is an example that Cleveland has been giving for the better part of 20 years. They try to build a team and then insert any quarterback that they feel could into that system, when in reality, that's usually not how it's supposed to work. I feel you should, once you get the quarterback right, once you get the progress that you've seen out of your quarterback, through all the growing pains of rookie seasons and maybe sophomore slumps, you can get a good gauge on how he's going to transition to the NFL level. Justin Fields, he's out of chances. This stop with the New York Jets is going to be his last chance to solidify himself as a possible starting quarterback in the NFL. Do I believe that he's going to end up succeeding in New York? I mean, I would say yes and no. The bar is set pretty low in New York by their standards. Justin Fields, he could. He didn't play terrible when he was with the Steelers this past year in those 6 games that he started, but he did not necessarily play that well. Again, I'll go back to how many times I've talked about I went to the Dallas Cowboys and Pittsburgh Steelers game. I was at Acrisure Stadium for that game. Justin Fields missed so many open throws. He missed the target so often. There is no reason that the Steelers in that game should not have beaten the Dallas Cowboys by at least 20. And yet Pittsburgh dropped the ball in that game. They dropped it. And that's the reality of Pittsburgh right now. I mean, they're a tire fire mess. And I could go on a tangent about them, but I'm going to save that for next week. But in regards to Justin Fields, he played okay. He played good. He didn't play great. If he played great, and Pittsburgh was 6-0 at that time, I don't think Justin Fields would have gotten the nod to, I don't think Russell Wilson would have got the nod to start over Fields for the rest of the season. And when you look at Justin Fields, yeah, he has the intangibles you want in regards to being a leader. He has the athleticism. He has the arm strength. I don't necessarily know if he knows how to read an NFL defense, to the level, of course, of like Joe Burrow or Patrick Mahomes. But here's the thing about Justin Fields. I don't think there's any more excuses. When it comes to Justin Fields' career, obviously with the Chicago Bears have been tone deaf to offense and to the quarterback position for the better part of 40 years. The last great Bears quarterback was Jim McMahon, who actually won a Super Bowl for the Chicago Bears back in 85, but the problem is even Jim McMahon wasn't necessarily at a point in time the best quarterback in the NFL. He left a lot to be desired, and he was very injury prone towards the back end of his career. He didn't really have that whole long of a career to the point of let's say a Tom Brady standard where he played 20 years. I believe Jim McMahon only played 7-8 years, something like that. I could be off on that, so feel free to fact check me on that. But in regards to the Chicago Bears, their best quarterback up until, recently has been Jay Cutler and Rex Grossman. That's nothing to write home about if you're Chicago. So Justin Fields starts in probably the most tone-deaf organization to offense at that point in time. That title goes to Pittsburgh now. But Justin Fields walks into Chicago, defensive culture, defensive spending, no offensive line to speak of, barely any weapons to speak of, and he played absolutely horrible. He did absolutely putrid the first couple years in the NFL. Then he moves on to Pittsburgh via trade with Chicago. He goes 4-2 as a starter. Doesn't necessarily play bad, but doesn't necessarily play great. And now he ends up with a $30 million, $40 million contract with the New York Jets, another organization that has been tone deaf to offense for the better part of 10 years, I would say, for the New York Jets. But and here's why I mention this, why I mention there's no more excuses. When you look at this roster that the New York Jets have, we don't need to talk about their defense much. Quinnen Williams, Sauce Gardner, Leonard Taylor, there's a Zaire Barnes, there's a lot to like about the New York Jets defense. They took a step back after Robert Saleh got fired last year, which I fully predicted. It made no sense to at least get rid of the best coach on staff at that point in time. But when you look at the offense for the New York Jets, there is honestly no reason why it shouldn't work. Again, it all comes back down to Justin Fields. Now, it's really going to come down to that offensive line, how well they're going to hold up, how well they're going to mesh together. As we all know, that's a death sentence for a quarterback if they're behind a poor offensive line, unless your name's Joe Burrow. But at running back, you got Breece Hall and Braelon Allen. That's a good tandem in the backfield. At wide receiver, you got Garrett Wilson, Allen Lazard, Tyler Johnson, Josh Reynolds, Xavier Gibson, Brandon Smith. There's a lot of depth at the wide receiver position in New York. And tight end, you got Jeremy Ruckert, you got Stone Mart, Zach Kuntz. But I know for a fact that the Jets, in my opinion, are going to draft Penn State tight end Tyler Warren to just add to this. So when you look at this offense, he has all the weapons he needs. He has the weapons that Pittsburgh honestly couldn't give him. I would take the New York Jets weapons on offense compared to Pittsburgh's any day of the week. Offensive line is still spotty, but again, the talent level is here on the New York Jets offensive side of the football. There's no more excuses for Justin Fields. Is he going to succeed? Again, I personally say no, just because I've seen what Justin Fields has done up until this point in his career. I think he's been in the NFL, 7 years almost? Maybe 5 to 6 years. Either way, he hasn't shown much. He hasn't shown anything of note. And that's just the brutally honest truth. Do I think it's possible he could succeed in New York? Yes. It depends on the new head coach, and it depends on the offensive play call system that they have going on. But in regards to people to hand the ball off to and to throw the ball to, there should be no excuses for Justin Fields. So that team, the New York Jets, is the most fascinating team to me just because of the Justin Fields dynamic and for that kind of price. $40 million, 30 guaranteed. That's kind of surprising to me when it comes to Justin Fields and his caliber of quarterback that he has been for the better part of his career. So my team to watch this upcoming NFL season would honestly be the New York Jets. Again, I think this is Justin Fields' final stop. If he wants to prove that he's an NFL starter, I don't think he'll get another chance anywhere else. I think the New York Jets is his final stop for being a starter in the National Football League. All right, now we're going to move into a little bit of college football, and I'm going to do something a little different. This is another Lako's list, iteration. I'm giving you my top college football coaches that are going into the 2025 season with the most to prove. Now, I've been very critical of certain coaches and teams and players over the past couple years, talking about this sort of stuff, but I'm going into based off last season, based off the conclusion of last season with Ohio State winning the college football playoff title. I'm going into 7. I found 7 coaches in college football that have the most to prove in this upcoming college football season. And right off the rip, I'm going to start with Mike Norvell, head coach of Florida State. I don't think it really needs much explanation. Florida State came off of an undefeated season back in 2023 and then end up being left out of the college football playoff after Jordan Travis got injured in the ACC title game or a couple weeks prior to the ACC title game. They didn't look good against Louisville when they won the ACC championship, and that put them at an undefeated season. They ran the table completely against every single team, and yet they were left out of the college football playoff. Now, fast forward to last season, this was probably the biggest drop-off I've ever seen, in 1 year, from a team that went undefeated to Mike Norvell's Florida State Seminoles going 2-10. That is pitiful. DJ Ungalale was probably the worst quarterback that they could have ever, wished for. I know that they thought that he was the guy towards, the offseason of 2023 going into the 2024 season. You left, and a lot of people thought DJU was better than Jordan Travis. So, Florida State, it was just trending upward for Florida State and Mike Norvell. It was just an unfortunate luck of the draw the year prior where Jordan Travis got injured. But now fast forward to this past season, 2-10, one of the worst teams in college football, one of the worst Power 4 teams in all of college football. They beat Cal and I believe Delaware State. I believe that's it. Every other team just absolutely steamrolled the Florida State Seminoles. If there's any coach that is going to be on the hot seat this upcoming year, it's going to be Mike Norvell. He has a lot to do and to make up for from last season if he wants to even keep his job in Florida State. Florida State is not a good program right now. Do I think they'll be better this year than they were last year? Yes, because it is so difficult to lose that many games in a single season if you're not considered a power team in the power, like a powerful, collegiate football program in the Power 4. So looking at Florida State, you go from undefeated in 2023 and only losing to Georgia in the Orange Bowl by 60, I might add. And then you come into this upcoming past year where you started number 10. You started ranked number 10 in the entire country. They were ranked number 10. You lose to Georgia Tech. You lose to Boston College. You lose to Miami. You lose to Florida. You lose to everybody on your schedule not named Cal. If there's one team that does need to prove something, it's Mike Norvell. Otherwise, I think he's out of a job this upcoming year. My second coach I have is Dabo Swinney. Now, I was very critical of Dabo Swinney earlier last year in the season because of how strict he is to old tradition in college football and how he didn't want to utilize the transfer portal at all in regards to building his roster and his team at Clemson. Now, I'm not saying that Dabo Swinney's going to be on the hot seat, but I think, it could definitely lean that way if certain things don't fall into place. I think a lot of it depends on Cade Klubnik, the quarterback. I think he's going to play well, and I think Clemson is going to be aiming for a back-to-back ACC championship, and I think they're going to be aiming for another college football playoff berth. Dabo Swinney and Clemson, they went 9-3 last year, but they had a paper-soft schedule at some points, and they lost to South Carolina to finish the year out. They did get the final seed. They did get the 12th seed in the college football playoff, but they got boat raced by Texas towards the back end of that game. So when you look at Dabo Swinney and Clemson, was it a successful season? Well, by Clemson standards, not really. Clemson standards for the better part of the past 10 years have been competing for national championships. So when you look at this as a whole, the writing was on the wall like 2 years ago. You went from Trevor Lawrence, a couple years ago. You went from Trevor Lawrence to DJU left. Then you got Cade Klubnik coming in, and he'll be back for his senior year this upcoming season. I think Dabo Swinney has a lot to prove, mainly because what's the alternative now? Like, what happens after you have a good quarterback, you have a Heisman hopeful quarterback? A lot of people are very high on Cade Klubnik coming into this year, but I think Dabo Swinney's got to prove something. I think he has to get back to the college football playoff. I'm not saying he's going to get fired if he doesn't, but I'm saying what that would mean for him. If he doesn't have an elite quarterback, he can't win it. So you go from he got Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence in college. Those are looked at as two of the best college football quarterbacks in the past 20 years. I think Dabo Swinney has a lot to prove this upcoming year. I know he made the college football playoff last year, but I think he definitely needs to prove something. My third head coach, Mario Cristobal from Miami. I'm just going to be totally real. If Cam Ward did not choose to transfer to Miami instead of whether he stayed at Washington State one more year or indeed stayed with his original choice to go to the NFL draft, he would have been probably a 5th-round draft pick this year. Now he's a 1st. But if Cam Ward did not choose the University of Miami, Miami was a 5-win football team last year. Again, I have been very, very critical of Mario Cristobal. I have been very critical of the Miami Hurricanes. I'm a fan. I should know. I've been critical of them my whole life, pretty much. But again, if Cam Ward didn't go to Miami, that would have been a 5-win football team easily, nowhere near sniffing the college football playoff or the ACC championship game, possibly. But Cam Ward did. Miami went 10-2, missed out on the ACC title game by 1 game, and got left out of the college football playoff. But again, when it comes to Mario Cristobal, he started his first year at Miami, train wreck, 5-7. The year after, not what we expected, but 8-4. Realistically, that should have been a 10-2, 11-1 team. So they finished 8-4 that year. And then the year after, which was this past year, they went 10-2 and nearly made it to the ACC title game and nearly made the college football playoff. So here's the thing. It's the writing's on the wall for Mario Cristobal. Every single year, it continues to grow. Now, the schedule this year is much less favorable than last year. You open with Notre Dame, you play Florida. Again, you don't play Clemson. And you don't play any of those big, high-powered teams in the ACC, if you want to put that in quotes, high-powered teams. But I think Cristobal has a lot to prove. You got your transfer quarterback in Carson Beck. You got good depth on the defensive side of the football and offensive side of the football. It's time for that new wave of Hurricane football to start. A lot of seniors left and left their mark on the U. But when it comes to Mario Cristobal, he's always been that guy who doesn't necessarily have the best time management strategy or anything like that. But as far as pressure going into the season, I think Cristobal is under immense pressure. He has to continuously show improvement. And I don't think he's going to get fired this year if he, underachieved like last year. If he went 10-2 again, do I think he would get fired? No, absolutely not. But again, he has to show improvements in certain areas. That's play calling, that's time management, clock management, all that stuff. And they went 10-2 last year. So is the trajectory going to continue to go upward? We're going to see. But I think Mario Cristobal is definitely under a lot of pressure. Okay, now I'm going to talk about Kalen DeBoer from Alabama. Filling in for Nick Saban is a daunting task for any new college football coach who would enter Alabama. It didn't matter who stepped foot in Tuscaloosa to replace Nick Saban when he retired. Everybody was automatically at a disadvantage. Nick Saban, widely considered the greatest college football coach of all time and one of the greatest football coaches in general of all time. So that was a daunting task in and of itself. But Kalen DeBoer in his first year at Alabama loses to Vanderbilt and loses to Oklahoma. And I know they had one more loss. It's escaping me right now, but either way, the fact that Kalen DeBoer did something that Nick Saban has never done in the same year is actually baffling. When you look at Kalen DeBoer losing to 2 unranked teams when they were favored in those games, Nick Saban, I think, only did that 3 times in his entire Alabama career, and he was at Alabama for nearly 20 years, if I can remember correctly. 2007 was his first year, so nearly 20 years. Now in comes Kalen DeBoer from Washington, and it's a tire fire. It's a train wreck. They played better towards the back end of the season, despite that Oklahoma game. Again, Alabama went 9-3, didn't make the SEC title game, didn't make the college football playoff, and I think the most pressure in the SEC standings is on Alabama. It depends on what Kalen DeBoer is going to do and how he's going to respond. He went 9-3 last year, and that is not even remotely close to the standard that Alabama has set. Now, again, that's due to the greatest football coach in history, arguably. But Kalen DeBoer coming into Bama and completely, looking unorganized and looking, kind of methodic. Kalen DeBoer just doesn't fit Alabama for me. I think Kalen DeBoer, if he does not show improvement, like in certain aspects on the offense and defense and his play calling and all that, if he goes 9-3 again, he very well might be fired. Just because of how high of a standard SEC football and Alabama football has. I think Kalen DeBoer easily under the most pressure this upcoming year. Next coach, Billy Napier from Florida. There were rumblings that they were going to fire him after the first game of the season last year when they lost to Miami 41-17. But he made a switch at quarterback, put in the freshman DJ Lagway over Graham Mertz, and he reaped the benefit of that. Florida, while they weren't world beaters, they were definitely a more respectable team towards the back end of that season. DJ Lagway is going to have an impressive year this year with the Florida Gators. And Billy Napier, basically, he saved his job towards the end of the year. Beating teams like Ole Miss, for example, and effectively keeping them out of the college football playoff. But that doesn't change the narrative that Billy Napier, in my opinion, still is not the best coach for Florida. I think that they can do way better, and I think, Billy Napier has a lot to prove. Was that back end of the season a fluke, or is that actually a sign of growth? Personally, I don't know. We're going to find out here in a couple months, but I would also put Billy Napier up here. Lincoln Riley from USC. This man, I'm not going to doubt how good he is as an offensive mind in college football, but Lincoln Riley throughout his college career, he has had, Lincoln Riley throughout his college career, Oklahoma and USC, he has had Jalen Hurts, Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, Caleb Williams. He has had so many Heisman Trophy winning quarterbacks. It's absurd. He's had so much top-end talent, high-end talent in college football at the quarterback position, and yet he has no national championships to show for it. He doesn't have a single college football playoff win to his resume, and everybody thought Lincoln Riley going to USC would have been the best move ever. Everybody thought he was going to take over that entire conference and take over the West Coast, but realistically, USC is a running joke. I get it. USC started the season hot. I predicted that they would have beat LSU, and they in fact did. But I don't think Lincoln Riley has the quarterback he's typically used to. Again, you're looking at a guy who had Baker Mayfield, who has solidified himself as a good quality quarterback in the NFL. Kyler Murray, he's hit and miss, but still shows big-time flashes whenever he gets the chance. Jalen Hurts, Super Bowl champion. What more do you want? And then Caleb Williams, up-and-coming, star for the Chicago Bears, at least we think. I think Lincoln Riley is under a lot of pressure this season just because where's the title wins? Where are the conference championship wins? Where's the college football playoff wins? Excuse me. The thing about Lincoln Riley is I don't think he's a bad coach at all. Excuse me. So I think going into this season, I think Lincoln Riley has a lot to prove. And my final coach I have is Brian Kelly from LSU. Again, sort of kind of like a Lincoln Riley situation. Sort of kind of like a Lincoln Riley situation. More so because he has had great teams at his tenure in Notre Dame. And he has a potential first-round draft pick for next year at quarterback, Garrett Nussmeier. But again, going to the SEC is such a different environment than it is playing at South Bend, Indiana. It's so much different than playing at Notre Dame. And again, I'm not knocking Brian Kelly as a bad coach. He's a good coach. But when you look at this, when you look at his career, the fact of the matter is he does not have a national championship to his name. He has made the national championship once as Notre Dame's head coach. Once. He made the college football playoff with Notre Dame, but no wins to show for it. And this past year in the SEC, his first year, it wasn't anything to write home about. They were looked at as they were going to compete for the SEC, and they didn't. They just didn't. So personally, I think Brian Kelly, he's definitely up there when it comes to quarterbacks. No, when it comes to head coaches that are on the hot seat. Not even on the hot seat, but just under a lot of pressure this upcoming college football season. All right, now we're going to finish off the episode. We're going to finish off the episode just talking about a couple teams in the NFL draft. There has been no trades so far for first-round draft picks in this upcoming 2025 NFL draft at the end of April. So what am I going to do? I'm just going to go over some teams that I feel like and this is, for the sole purpose of trading up for a quarterback. I don't necessarily believe that anybody's going to trade up for anybody else other than Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter. But I'm going to go over some teams that definitely need a quarterback, and potentially I can see trading up with Tennessee or Cleveland for the first or second overall pick. Obviously, you have the Titans at 1. They need a quarterback badly, whether that be Cam Ward or Shedeur. They need a quarterback badly to get that culture right, to get that team heading in the right trajectory. So easily, they more than likely are going to keep the first overall pick and take Cam Ward, but they need a quarterback. Cleveland, they have the second overall pick, and they need a quarterback badly, but I don't necessarily know if they're going to get Shedeur Sanders. I don't know if they're going to draft him. I think they're going to pair Abdul Carter with Myles Garrett. I don't necessarily believe that Cleveland should do that. I don't think it's a bad option to pair those two, but it reminds me too much of like Bradley Chubb being drafted to pair with Von Miller in Denver, and that just never matriculated into anything. So this kind of has a similar feel to me. You have an elite established pass rusher, then you draft another possible star pass rusher, and it just didn't work out. And Abdul Carter has a lot of injuries, so we're going to find out a little bit about that. But I think, personally, Cleveland should take a quarterback, and it is possible that they would trade places with Tennessee, given the right price. The Giants, despite everything that I've read and seen, I don't care that they have Jameis Winston and Russell Wilson on the roster. I feel like they would still draft a quarterback, so they need a quarterback, and Shedeur Sanders more than likely would be there at number 3. The Patriots don't. The Jaguars don't. The Raiders are another team that possibly could trade up for a quarterback. I don't necessarily believe Geno Smith is the answer to get, a new era of football with Pete Carroll, kicked off in Las Vegas. I think that the Raiders will. I think they can easily offer something to Tennessee that would get them to bite and give the Raiders the first overall pick. Again, it's possible. Another team that would is, again, I talked about the Jets a little bit earlier. Do I think Justin Fields is the answer? No, but I think you should maximize your opportunity with Justin Fields and draft more skill position players. That's why I have them going with Tyler Warren at 7th overall. If you look at the 9th pick, you have the Saints, who are in desperate need of any sense of life in the NFL right now. They don't have a quarterback to speak of other than Spencer Rattler and Derek Carr. I don't even know if Derek Carr is still on the roster, but I think he is. But Derek Carr, not what he used to be, at least his time at the Raiders. And then Spencer Rattler, there's nothing really to say about him other than a complete nobody at the NFL level. Other teams that I can think about that need a quarterback, that are further down in the draft, Pittsburgh, of course. I still don't know what they're doing whatsoever. I think this is probably the worst offseason I've ever had to experience as a Pittsburgh Steelers fan. It's just reality. It's where we're at. But I can realistically see there's probably 7 to 10 teams that I can see possibly trading up in the NFL draft to get either Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders. But again, let me know what you guys think. Who do you think is going to trade up? Who do you think the Titans are going to draft if they draft at number 1? Leave all those in the comments. I'll be more than happy to answer and engage in a conversation like that. And that's going to wrap it up this week on The Lake Show, everyone. Again, I really appreciate you all making me a part of your day. Be sure to like, subscribe, share with your friends, leave some comments down below. I'm your host, Dominic Lako. God bless.
I love the chase and the hunt, and I set the pace when I'm running. I always take what I want and I always give it 100. Don't need a bank, no I'm funded. Play the game like it's nothing. I'm always thankful for something. Don't take for granted, stay humble. Now wake up! It's time to look at the enemy. Look in the mirror if he is no friend to me. It's not working out, maybe it's the chemistry. It's time to